Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Dr. Cornel West, a independent candidate for president, and just launched the Justice for All Party, which I look forward to getting into. Obviously, I want to start on the most important topic, I think, globally and in American politics, but just humanity, and that would be the continued slaughter and genocide that the U.S. is paying for in Gaza. Um, Latest developments are it seems that uh, some investigative reporting has found whatever claims that Israel was making related to the United Nations relief organization having individuals tied to the Hamas attack. It seems that there's not much evidence to back that up, but the U.S. Cut off funding to that organization based on whatever Israel was saying. So that has made it worse, obviously, in terms of the famine and starving, thirst among the Gazans. And we continue now nearing 30,000 dead, which might be an undercount. So wanted to ask you, obviously, you're running against Biden and potentially Trump, but if you were president, I mean, is this as simple as don't write the check, or do we need to go deeper than that?
Well, one, I just want to begin by saluting you, brother. You got to be one of the hardest working brothers and sisters and siblings in the business. Thank you and brother Tim, sister Savvy, and some others. I salute you. You all inspiration to me. But no, brother, actually, it's much more simple than people project it to be. You just have to tell the American people the truth about the nature of the Israeli occupation, domination, and now the apartheid rule. You got to tell them the truth about the ethnic cleansing going back to 1948. You tell them the truth about the genocidal attack. I would have American lawyers join South African brothers and sisters bringing Israel before the International Court of Justice, not to isolate them or target them as if they're the only nation in the world that's mistreating people. But when it comes to genocidal attack, there's war crimes across the board. We got armies committing war crimes across the board. Then you got crimes against humanity. Then you got the crime of genocide. But it's a matter of just being honest and telling the American people the truth as a president, leader, spokesperson, and fellow citizen. So what does that mean? It means that you have ceasefire, diplomatic processes begin, you have an end of the siege, you have an end of the occupation, and you have a process by which Palestinian dignity and equality can go hand in hand with Jewish security and Jewish safety. So you say, well, look, we're not going to have any more massacres or genocides of anybody in the region across the board. And we're going to make sure that human dignity in the form of our precious Palestinians, human dignity in the form of our precious Israelis is upheld. And it means, in fact, that you're going to have equality across the board. The two-party system, the two-state solution is over. You're either going to have one state, which is apartheid, or you're going to have one state with two nations, or you're going to have one secular state. Those are the options. Now, American people, this is what I think. And I lay out my view. Now, you think about it and wrestle with it. But no more mirage or two-state solutions would simply reinforce Israeli apartheid, Israeli ethnic cleansing, Israeli genocidal attacks in these last few months. And we're going to make sure that Palestinians and Jews have to be able to generate ways in which they can have social arrangements together. People say, this is impossible. They're at each other's throat. At the moment, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank God you got younger generation, young Jewish brothers and sisters, young Israelis, more and more, and young Palestinians as well, saying, they're going to have to create some kind of society together. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, that has a chance of a snowball in hell. Well, you know what? It's a living hell right now in Gaza, in the West Bank. And we're going to have some dreams, some visions of creating ways in which we allow that hell to be eliminated and erased. For me, that's what a free Palestine looks like. It's one in which there's Palestinian dignity and equality before the law, with equal access to resources, but at the same time, it goes hand in hand with Jewish security and Jewish safety.
What do you say? I think you obviously are a spiritual person. You like to look at things on a deeper level. It seems that there's a much deeper level here in America of basically not wanting at all to expose a lot of the crimes of Israel. I mean, you even look at the media, there's been reports that CNN seems to have very rigid orders coming from the top in how this is covered. You obviously have New York Times columnists writing columns comparing Middle Eastern countries to animals. It
Yeah,
seems
this
like this
brother
is,
Thomas Friedman
yeah.
ought to be shame of himself. My God.
So
All right.
if you were president and you're proposing one country, how do you tackle the religious component? Because obviously, for a lot of Americans and obviously a lot of Israelis, there's a religious component to this that they believe, they need a Jewish state, and they're willing to either tolerate or look the other way at the oppression and occupation that has given that Jewish state.
Well, prophetic Judaism would always be highly critical if of any supremacist state, white supremacists, Jewish supremacists, Gentile supremacists, straight supremacists, any supremacist state. But prophetic Judaism has a moral and spiritual dimension that secular Zionism never had. Zionism is a modern creation because the age of Europe could not come to terms with the precious humanity of Jews. Began in 1492, you expelled Jews from Spain, the major empire of the day. The age of Europe ends in 1945 with indescribable concentration camps, indescribable evil. And so Zionism was a response to the inability of the European empires and nation states to treat Jews as human beings. And it was a particular way in which Jews felt they could get some safety and some security in a Jew-hating Europe. Now, it's understandable. My God, you got to get a way out. We've had that as Black folk. You don't treat us right. Garvey said, we got to go. That makes all the sense in the world. But the question is, when you go, when Jews jumped out of the burning buildings of Europe and they landed on someone else's land, and you say there's no land, that there's no people here, just land. No, you're lying. We saw the same lies told by Puritans, same lies told by those who discovered Australia or discovered Canada. That becomes secular colonial language. There's human beings there. And like Albert Einstein and Judah Magnus and Ahakaham and others in the Jewish community said, we're going to have to learn how to coexist with these Arab brothers and sisters. But Jabotinsky and the others said, no, we will dominate them. And if we have to, we will annihilate them. Well, Netanyahu's father was an assistant for Jabotinsky. He's a projection of the Jabotinsky tradition. And so they gave up on coexistence and they dominated, and now they're annihilating. And so in that sense, prophetic Judaism as a religion provides tremendous spiritual and moral guidance. But most religions, Christianity, Buddhism, and so forth, they have the prophetic strand and they have a mainstream strand. And the mainstream strand is very dangerous. The mainstream strand will accommodate itself to any form of empire, any form of any form of domination in a society. It's only the prophetic strands of Judaism and Christianity and Islam. The Malcolm X's in Islam, the Martin Kings, Fannie Lou Hamers in Christianity, or the Rabbi Heschels and Leibowitz's and others in the various strands of Jewish thought, who are truth tellers. Right. I would include actually Chomsky in some ways. He's as secular and Cartesian as he can be, but and at the same time, he's got so much courage and vision in terms of keeping track of those who are victimized, no matter who they are, including when they're victimized by fellow Jews and by those who run the Israeli state. So that, yes, the spiritual and the moral is very important, but it's usually hijacked by powers that be.
Right.
It's like the Klan versus Martin King. Both of them claiming to be Christian. One hijacked Christianity and turned it into one of the most vicious forms of evil expression. And the other, Martin King, with all of his faults, trying to hold on to the love and what our Jewish brothers and sisters would call that hesed, that steadfast love of orphan and widow and fatherless and motherless and subjugated and persecuted. So as a one now spilling over into electoral politics. I simply just bring that movement, because the campaign is nothing but a moment in a movement. I bring that movement and legacy into electoral politics. So it's anti-imperial, dismantle the empire. It's deeply critical to capitalism and its greed and its obsession with profit. No, we want people's basic needs satisfied. Basic income, abolish poverty, abolish homelessness, make sure the trade union movement, of course, we've seen each other on the line, trade union movement, especially the wing that's willing to go to strike and fight for higher wages. We want $27 for minimum wage. And it goes on and on and on. Ending mass incarceration, reparations for Black folk, on and on and on. That's my tradition. That's my legacy. When it comes to international affairs, American imperial policy has got to go. I want to end to AFRICOM on the continent. I want NATO to be disbanded. I don't want it to be simply an expansion of U.S. hegemony. I want security for Europe, but I also want the Russian Empire to have some kind of security. I've got my critique of Putin. There's no doubt that he is engaged in some gangster activity now and in the past. Same is true with my critiques of Iran. I'm glad to see Iran supporting my Palestinian brothers and sisters, but I have no patience whatsoever for the suppression of the woman life freedom movement. I want to be morally consistent and politically constant across the board and being solidarity with anybody who's suffering.
And my last question on this, obviously we don't want to make this about electoral politics, because the most important thing is, the loss of life. You were in Dearborn recently talking to Arab Americans who have lost a lot of family members in Gaza, also the West Bank over the years. On an electoral map, I mean, if President Biden is vulnerable in Michigan, it might be his support of what Israel's doing that costs them Michigan, yet they want to blame you and Jill Stein. I want to ask you, you can't get in the president's mind, but if the Democratic Party is so scared of Trump and they think democracy's at risk, why would Biden be knowingly, taking actions that would cost him not only Michigan, but potentially other states where young people might make the difference, Arab Americans might make the difference? The only thing I can think of is they don't want to lose their donors who happen to be, predominantly pro-Israel, and they don't want to lose the hand that feeds them.
No, I think, that role of big money and the big lobbies is crucial. But I also think that Biden and those around him, they live in a world of illusion. They are self-deluded. They think that the rest of the world should think like them, and therefore, in the end, they will always be a anti-Trump element in their thinking and end up coming their way, no matter how bad they are. I mean, that's what it is to live in a world in which you've never been fully accountable or answerable to anybody outside of your own little silo, outside of your own little bubble, as it were. And so you're absolutely right. When I go to Dearborn and I talk to my brother Khaled or brother Abdul, I was just there 2 days ago. I was just there a few weeks ago, and I'm continually going back. It's not about politics. I want them to know that no oppressed group undergoing vicious genocidal attack ought to feel as if they are by themselves in the world. I would have done the same thing with Armenians. I would have done the same thing with the Tutsis. I would have done the same thing with Jews, same thing with the Belgian Congolese under genocidal attack and feeling as if nobody cares. You want to be present rhetorically. You want to be present physically. You want to be present politically. You want to be present physically. Put your body on the line in marches and so forth. Why? Because that's the moral thing to do. That's the spiritual thing to do, and it has political consequences. So that when Biden even thinks of the Arab community or the Palestinian community as just another interest group to be calculated in such a way that they will end up lining up behind him in the election, he's just on such a low level of thinking of people's situations. But that's what Machiavellian politics is all about. It would be low comedy if there weren't so many people who were crushed and dominated and occupied and subjugated and exploited. And it would be low comedy. Why? Because it'd be farce. There's no principles. There's no integrity. There's no honesty. You say anything to win. You do anything to win. And it's all just Machiavellian reflection and calculation. Please. And it's not just Biden. It's Democratic Party as a whole. Look at the voices in the whole Democratic Party, no matter what color they are, to enable genocide and to run around the country and say you're defending democracy and redeeming the soul of the nation. I mean, well, that was Martin Luther King Jr.'s slogan, right? When they founded SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. We want to redeem the soul of the nation. They were talking about the vicious form of apartheid, terrorism, lynching, and they had the moral courage to redeem the soul. And then Biden's people are going to come along and appropriate the same motto when they're enabling genocide. They're enabling Wall Street domination. They're enabling grotesque wealth inequality. They act like they're in solidarity with the trade union movement. Yeah, well, you go out and march for about 90 seconds, give a little speech and walk back into the car. Next thing you know, you on the cutting edge for the working class. Please, that's a joke. It's a joke.
I gotta ask you some tough questions too, which I'm sure you appreciate.
Sure.
Let me tell you, I read the room, and I'm looking at folks online, leftists who say, I love Dr. West and what he stands for, but goddamn, I can't keep up with him. He started out with MPP, then he moved to the Green Party, then he moved to Independent. Now I hear he's launching a new party, still independent, but the Justice for All Party. You do have ballot access now in Alaska and Oregon, but there's a lot of people who look at this dynamic. I mean, Biden's got the lowest approval ratings for an incumbent Democrat in recent memory. No incumbent president at 37% approval rating. The only other two that were that low were Jimmy Carter and Papa Bush. They both lost. And
Right.
Trump just lost his immunity case, and he might be convicted before the election. So they look at this as, I know you've made your choice, but there's a chance a third-party candidate could really compete here, get 5% or more, yet you're running now independent Justice Party, Jill Stein's running, you guys are kind of pulling from each other. Do you think that was a mistake possibly to leave the Green Party? Because it seems like you're starting a party, so you're not against having being part of a party. It just seems like you guys might be pulling from each other, where if you were together, you could be, people have a clear choice of the left. I don't consider RFK Jr. left at all.
Right.
So what do you think of that criticism that you kind of have switched too much and people, want you to reconsider?
Well, the idea of starting with the People's Party was because they came to me, and I always appreciate that. But there was no way that could work for a number of different reasons. It was very kind of Chris Hedges to suggest that I then move with Sister Jill and Brother Jamu and work with the Green Party. But it was clear that that was in no way a fit that would work. It was too much work inside of the Green Party, too many Green Party events, all the different internal Green Party debates with the various candidates. And I had no idea that Jill Stein was going to end up running. I mean, she's right with our campaign for that precious amount of time. And I'm appreciative on the one hand, but on the other hand, I was glad to get out, because there was no way that I could be myself, be fully and freely myself within the context of the Green Party. So I was glad to be independent. And you see, the Justice for All Party is twofold. Certain states.
Well, let me just ask on the Green Party. Was the issue that you guys had a difference in values, or more like there was too many bureaucratic layers that you had to jump through?
It was mainly bureaucratic layers. I mean, we resonate in terms of policies and so forth. Mm. But there's also a number of tensions that were personal that not even worth talking about. But I want to be honest about it. But the only reason, but there's two reasons that Justice for All Parties is important. One is that, as you know, in certain states, you run as an independent, you have a certain number of signatures. You run as a party, you have far fewer. In other states, it's the opposite. So in some states, I'll be independent. In other states, I would need a party. In other states, there have been parties who come forward. Thank God for my brothers and sisters in Alaska, the Aurora Party. That's how I ended up gaining access to the ballot. We've talked to the Unity Party in South Carolina. We're talking with the Peace and Freedom Party to have their nomination in California. So you have to be very improvisation. I know people get tired of me talking about jazz. I never get tired talking about jazz, ever, ever. Why? Because it's my life. It's catastrophe, swing, and improvisation. You got to be flexible. Now people say, well, what was the People's Party? That was the first take. What was the Green Party? That was the second take. Now we got independent. We're doing a number of things. What is constant? Love of the people. What is constant? Tell the truth about predatory capitalist processes. Tell the truth about white supremacy and male supremacy and transphobia and homophobia. Tell the truth about the creativity and humanity of oppressed people who can shape the world if they organize themselves in such a way and hold on to their vision and don't sell out. That's the same calling in all of those takes. First take, second take, third take, and so forth. And we're going to be consistent. I'm thoroughly convinced, and now you might even agree with me. I think Brother Biden's going to run out of gas. He's going to have an LBJ moment, man, and he's going to pull out, and they're going to have to shift to plan B. Who's on the bench? Come on, Kevin. Come on, Gretchen. Come on, Kamala. Let's see. Let's have you run against myself and the others. Trump may be on his way to jail. Who's the B team? Is Nikki the only B team? Let us see. We don't know. We're in real time. The empire is melting down. And when you have such a meltdown, you have the worst of it becomes manifest. And we see that in Gaza, the enabling of levels of violence beyond description and attacks on our precious brothers and sisters there in Gaza, Palestinian brothers and sisters and so on. But you also have new possibilities because it's clear the elites across the board are corrupt. The military overreach is pulling all of the money out of the budget, that the citizens are feeling hopeless. So some of them will follow a neo-fascist Pied Piper like Trump, but I don't think he's going to sustain it. They're beginning to see the hypocrisy and double standards of the Democratic Party. And what do we have to offer? And I don't even say it's just not just on the left. It's just decent people trying to hold on to integrity, honesty, and tell the truth and be in solidarity with poor and working people. Now, if people call that left, then yes, that's left. But that, to me, is just a moral and spiritual practice and witness. And if we can provide an alternative to the neo-fascist and neoliberal option, then we do have an unprecedented historic moment because the American empire is being decentered in a serious way.
And could you provide an update? Obviously, you got 2 states now. There's going to be deadlines to make it on a lot of these states' ballots. Do you have momentum to get on the ballots in swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin?
There's about 14 states is low-hanging fruit, though. I mean, Louisiana and other places, just a matter of $500, 500 signatures. It's just a matter of the timing. So by the time April comes, you're going to look up and say, oh my God, Brother West now has 12, 14. Ooh, he's taking over. No, it's just because of the way in which they design. I mean, the duopoly is just so unjust for anybody trying to make a move outside of it. So they only give you a certain amount of time, a certain amount of days, a certain amount of weeks. And so we should have about, I hope, about 14, 15 by the eyes of March. I'm looking for about 30 by the summer. And we're shooting for 50 by November. And believe me, we're going to surprise some people, man.
And you expect to be on the ballots in most of the swing states?
Absolutely. Very, very much so. We got a ground crew in Michigan right now that's strong as ever.
And I don't know if you saw, but it looks like the usual suspects are starting early. Politico just came out with a piece already blaming you and Jill Stein and a little bit of RFK if Biden loses. I read that as usually they wait a little for that. So if they're blaming you 9 months before the election, maybe they, the collective media, political, industrial complex already believes Biden would lose.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true. But anytime your first move, your first instinct is to put tremendous weight on those who at the moment have the lowest numbers, you can tell they're not interested in the truth. They have no capacity, at least they're not exercising capacity for self-criticism, to take responsibility on just how milquetoast and impoverished their own platforms and programs actually are. And you think about it, even my brothers and sisters in Detroit, they say, well, early on, all they had to do was call for a ceasefire. I mean, what kind of courage does it take to just want to stop the killing when you're killing, 3,000 babies every month, and they still won't do it. They still won't do it. And those of us on moral grounds who call for ceasefire and the end of the siege and end of occupation and the Palestinian-Israeli arrangement in which there's equality across the board, we become the villains and the culprits. But that's just a sign of not just weakness, but unbelievable inability to examine yourself and your own visions and strategies and tactics. And we've seen that over and over and over again. I mean, when they tried to say the same thing about Nader, you had almost 300,000 Democrats who voted Republican. They don't say a mumbling word about them. Oh no, they're not a factor. It's all Nader people. Well, they're not serious. They're not concerned with a serious analysis.
Or that Al Gore lost his home state, but
lost in the home state. Absolutely.
I'd like to get your thoughts on. There seems to be this playbook now. We're about to hit 10 years of Flint and the Flint water crisis.
Oh, yeah.
The water's still bad. Nobody has been sent to prison. Nobody's even faced a jury. It doesn't look like anyone's going to find justice. Now we're seeing in East Palestine, different. The inciting incident was different, but the same thing. It's been normalized. You get the EPA saying nothing to see here. There's no contamination. Everything's fine. Meanwhile, I got residents calling me, my colleagues. They're getting cancer. They're sick. Burning eyes, sore throat, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, bloody noses a year later. And the media stopped covering it other than the 1-year anniversary. There's no criminal charges for Norfolk Southern. I mean, we could go down the list. You got Native Americans have been poisoned by corporations and the government, Black communities, Hispanic communities. It just seems like corporations or the government could get away with, whether it's intentional or just recklessness, making people sick, killing them, and there's no criminal accountability, and people can't even. Norfolk Southern doesn't have to pay for relocation for East Palestine residents. What are your thoughts? If you were to become president, seems like we need to start re-examining what the EPA's mission is here, because I'm seeing a lot of cover-ups.
Oh, absolutely, and you see the kind of captivity of these institutions to the huge private companies tied to profit rather than taking seriously people's plight and satisfying their social need. Absolutely. But I think the key word here, though, is accountability on the ground. You think about that in terms of police brutality, police murder. Where is the accountability on the ground that calls for the transformation of the ways in which people provide safety and protection? Same is true in Wall Street. Lack of accountability. Same is true in Silicon Valley. Elites walking away with billions and billions of dollars and their workers. I was just with Chris Smalls just yesterday. Wonderful dialogue in Staten Island about Amazon and ways in which it intimidates, the way in which it tries to put fear in the heart of those brothers and sisters of all colors who are trying to organize. We see this across the board. We see it as well in terms of patriarchy. We see it in other structures of domination in which people who have privilege act as if they can say and do anything with no accountability at all. I was just at the Mama Akua house on the chocolate side of Detroit with the great family of General Baker, from League of Revolutionary Black Workers, and Brother Darrell Mitchell and others. Those are my brothers and sisters and comrades from the 60s and 70s. And we were talking about this lack of accountability. Flint, grand example of it. And I always try to make various allusions of that example, but you can imagine there's a whole host of other examples as well. As I understand it, you've got to be one of the few outlets that has been consistent about Flint. I'm not saying that just to exalt you excessively, but it's a fact. And it's something that needs to be pointed out to keep that focus, keep a limelight on it, even though the other issues that are continually surfacing need to be highlighted too. But I'm with you in that regard. And that's why, again, it's very strange in the eyes of most fellow citizens to have someone who comes out of social movements to be in electoral politics. Because I'm not a garden variety politician at all. I'm bearing witness and I'm being a witness to the suffering and the resilience of oppressed people here and around the world in the context of electoral politics. And therefore, it's going to be very, very different. You know, I'm looking right now at Manhattan School of Music that used to be Juilliard. And when the jazz musicians went to Juilliard, it could be Miles Davis, it could be Wynton Marsalis, and they started playing those blue notes and flat notes and things. And Juilliard said, well, you know, we have an appreciation of it, but we're not really used to hearing that music. You don't say. That's right. Because those blue notes come from a tradition of a great Black people who, in the face of overwhelming terror and trauma, keep dishing out their truths, their styles, their smiles, their love, their courage, and their struggles for freedom. And you want to do it on your own terms. I go in electoral politics on my own terms, but still learning and listening for those.
Last question. I know you got to go. You know, you travel a lot, even before the election. I keep hearing every first Friday of the month, the economy's booming, sizzling jobs report, CNN tells us. You know, it's not just Biden. Republicans, when they're in power, push this too. If the unemployment rate is low or a lot of jobs are created, even though they don't want to tell you what kind of jobs. You go around the country, more so now that you're running. Is it booming for the people in Detroit and Flint and Milwaukee and all the other places you go? Not just there, rural communities. Because it seems to me the people I talk to are hanging by a thread.
Oh, well, we know, you know, it's over 67% of the folk living paycheck to paycheck. I started this campaign, was kicked off in Mississippi. Mississippi is ground zero for the struggle of Black people. When I went to Lexington, when I went to Brandon, when I went to Jackson, I didn't see that booming economy. I saw some precious folks struggling, 2 jobs, still wrestling with poverty, still trying to gain access to decent housing, trying to gain access to safe communities as the drug problem and the overdose and the addictions and the guns and so forth were overflowing. I think it's a sad thing. We even get this among those who I have a deep respect for, you know, the Harold Myersons and the Robert Kuttners. I've learned much from them. I continue to learn much from them. But when they come out and say, well, they sometimes suggest, well, this is as good as it gets. I say, no, Brother Harold, no. Brother Robert, no. That's as good as it gets given the narrow context of statistics that are collected by the various bureaucracies. But when it look at the concrete experience of people as they wrestle with prices, as they wrestle with wounds, as they wrestle with housing challenges, as they wrestle with crime, as they wrestle with the decay in the culture, as they wrestle with the lies of the politicians and the crimes like what's going on in Gaza, you say, no, don't use those statistics to somehow hide and conceal the massive social misery that people are dealing with every day. And I think one of the things that backfires against Biden and his people is they have to just lie about him and make him look as if he's, you know, the second cousin of Eugene Debs and Martin King and Fannie Lou Hamer. You said, no, Biden is the same neoliberal politician who was the architect of mass incarceration, the same one who opted for Wall Street with Obama, the same one enabling genocide right now. That's the same Biden. And don't try to act as if he's some grand FDR come back from the dead. No, not at all. Has he done some decent things? Yes, he's done some decent things, but that pales in the face of what I've just said.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. You're looking for volunteers, donations. Tell people.
That's right.
How they can help.
CornelWest2024.com. CornelWest2024.com. And the beautiful thing is, I mean, each place I go, there's more volunteers, more people. We're expanding the personnel because we're gaining more money. As you know, we don't take any corporate money. We don't have any PACs and so forth. So in some ways, it's just amazing that we've been able to do with the little money that we have.
Mm.
I come from a black folk who use what we got and take it a long way. We could get from New York to California in a car on an empty tank. How did you do it? Well, we listened to Curtis Mayfield, and next thing you know, we were there. Ah, wow. That's what it is to be part of a great freedom struggle.
Well, appreciate you taking the time, and we'll keep in touch as we go.
Indeed. Stay strong, my brother. You take good care.